Welcome to the Medic Side Hustles podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Shubhendu Kulshreshtha, an executive coach and an emergency physician helping clinicians like you make medicine your side hustle. I also author the impactful Clinician micro newsletter and a side hustle readiness quiz that you can take down in the comments. In each episode, we'll sit down with an inspiring guest who's redefined their career, turning their strengths and experiences into something greater. We'll dig into their journey and draw out a career roadmap, finding crucial decision-making moments that we can all learn from. In the second half, I'll hand over the hosting to my guest and let them ask me whatever they like about coaching and non-clinical careers or anything else. Live audience, you'll get a chance to ask us your questions at the end. So please keep putting them into the comments with the letter Q at the beginning, just to make it a bit easier for us to find. And without further ado, I want to quickly introduce our guest today, Portia Gibson. Portia's got a fantastic story going from an A&E nurse, taking things private and seeing what life looks like on the other side. And I'm really excited to dive into that journey today. So thank you for joining me today, Portia. How are you?
Hi, thank you very, very much for inviting me to come and speak today. This is super exciting. I'm extremely well, thank you.
Fantastic. And I've seen that you've got a very loving following on LinkedIn as well. And everyone had such warm responses and lots of them connected with me as well. And I was so happy to meet them. It's a wonderful community around you. So Portia, I think the idea of this podcast is to talk about how medicine might be a side hustle, but I think you've taken it a step beyond that and said clinical work can be taken private in a way that at least I never imagined it could. So I'm really curious as to what your journey looked like and what we can all take away from it. So just at a very high level, tell us how you got to where you are now and what is it that you actually do?
Okay, well, thank you. So, yeah, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for 30 years. And over my career, I've worked in a whole bunch of different hospitals, largely in London. And then I moved down to Sussex when my children were small. And my most recent job was as the lead educator in A&E, as the senior sister there, of something that I just loved with all my heart. I loved it. But some kind of family issues happened and some illness. And so I left my job rather hurriedly. And in hindsight, I probably should have taken sick leave, but it wasn't me who was sick. So that didn't feel legitimate, and sorted out that. But A&E, for anyone who has worked in A&E, it's like a drug, it's bad for your health, but you can't help go back and have a little taster. So once things were settled a bit more at home, I joined the nurse bank and went back. And it's then that, having been on the other side, that I was like, oh my gosh, these patients are saying the same thing over and over again. I wish someone had told me. I wish I knew this. Oh, why didn't they say? And I thought, as healthcare professionals, we do say that information, but they're perhaps not in a space to be able to hear it.
Mm.
So I thought, right, this is not okay. I didn't feel particularly burnt out by COVID per se, but it did make me reevaluate what I did. And so I bought a horse. And for
Okay.
anyone who knows me, my happiest place is to be outside in the mud and rain. And that's really, really important to me. So that's where I'm at. And I decided to set up a post-op nurse to support patients after they'd had surgery, because I think we're really good in hospitals at getting you fit for surgery. Well, perhaps not prehab, but getting you through your surgery. The complication rates are low in elective orthopedic surgery. But your recovery starts the minute everything stops and you're at home. And I think that's a big ask. And I can't think of another time when we are asked to fend for ourselves with no information. And so that's why I set up Post-op Nurse.
Wow. Yeah, that resonates with me a lot. I think having had health issues in my family as well and being put on the other side, you realize the big discrepancy between the role that we play as clinicians when we're in the hospital versus what the patients and the families actually need from us. And we do our job really well, but that still doesn't fill all the voids that's left for the family and the patients. I think it's really beautiful that you've taken on a journey and from your own experience to say that, hey, there's something missing, there's something I can do about it, and actually made that happen. What was the moment you decided that you need to take this on by yourself?
Well, I'm looking for someone to join me. So if anyone's out there, what was the moment? I think I was looking back, working as my role in A&E. I was also an associate lecturer at my local university, working there, and I've just felt like it was always so kind of structured in NHS, and there's so many hoops and hurdles, and I just thought, can't we just try something else? Can't we just try something else? So, and then I knew when I went back in the nurse bank that I wouldn't be able to carve out a different way to help the nurses learn. So I thought, I don't know is the answer. I don't know what the pivotal moment was, but a friend of mine is a physio, and I just used to see the joy that she got from the work she was giving. And I think I cut myself some slack and thinking, obviously in A&E, it's all very da-na-na and all super sexy stuff, and you're cardioverting people and chucking drugs in. And this is the polar opposite of that. And it took me a while to get my head around, is that valuable? Is it
Mm,
valuable to hold someone's hand? Is it valuable to be reassuring them? Is it valuable to give them confidence?
yeah.
So, and the reason I mentioned about the horse is because I can ride, but it's really frightening being on a horse when you're not really sure what to do. And so I could have muddled my way through, but I decided to invest in some education and get some
Okay.
support. And
Yeah.
so by doing that, I'm learning incrementally and slowly and more carefully. And then I'm becoming more confident. And then I'm really enjoying it. And then I can empower other people. And I think they're complete parallels.
Mm.
Health and horses. Who knew?
Wow. So sort of the journey you've gone on in terms of getting familiar with horses and learning to ride is
Mm.
in a way what you help people go through with their post-op journey. Is that,
I think so.
yeah.
Yeah, because you don't know what you don't know. And so if you're going for elective hip and knee surgery, your surgeon is going to say to you, you'll be up and walking the first day, which is true. But, we all know that you're not walking with confidence, you're not walking pain free. And so, therefore, why would you ask loads of questions if no one's mentioned the kind of negative sides to recovering from surgery, the loss of
Mm.
independence, the loss of confidence, how you reevaluate your life when you're faced with a health condition. You suddenly think, is this what I want to be doing with my life? Is there anything I can do differently? So, yeah, I think something that's important to say is I set up post-op nurse and then I left it kind of flapping about in the wind because I had no idea what to do. And
Okay.
then this friend of mine, Sophie, who's a physio, had just been to the British Lifestyle Medicine Conference, and she rang me. She's like, "You've got to speak to this. You've got to come on this webinar. There's this crazy woman called Dr. Jo Watkins. She's mad. You'll love her. And she's doing a webinar." And it was my first even attending a webinar. I didn't even know what a webinar was. So I logged onto this thing at 6 o'clock in the morning. I'm thinking, what nutter does a webinar at 6 o'clock in the morning? And it was Jo. And what Jo was doing is she, like yourself, is a doctor. She's a GP. And she was setting up, what does she call it? SUS, we call it. So it's a startup surgery, support surgery. And she was offering a year's worth of kind of coaching structured program of which I'm a sort of founder member for. So I frantically was looking around in my highly flammable dressing gown, trying to find a credit card to secure a place on this course. And it's that year's course, which was so structured and with a community of like-minded people, because that for me is fundamental, that has
Mm.
got me now to where I am now, where I'm like, yeah, I definitely know what I'm doing. I can definitely see the value and I'm really proud of it. So yeah, that I needed that
Yeah. Jo is
structure.
absolutely fantastic, and the kind of people she
Yeah, she's
works with really
awesome.
transforming things is, and she's just such a nice human being. She's
Yeah,
absolutely lovely.
yeah.
What I want to just kind of pick up is this word that we've often been talking about, which is value. And I think there
Mm,
was a shift in the perception of value for yourself in terms of what value was for the patient. And I think as clinicians, we think it's the care we provide, it's the diagnosis we make. But then on the flip side, there was missing value, which you kind of covered up. And then there was value around the education and showing the journey and helping people take the next step as they go along. I mean, these guys are waking up one day, coming into hospital, having their normal,
I know.
natural knees that they've lived with all their lives taken out and some metal work put in, and then being discharged the same day. So you wake up with a knee and you go to bed with a different knee entirely, and then there's you're kind of on your own on the rest of that journey, and there's value in how you help them go on with that. I mean, you could arguably say, well, it's going to go the way it's going to go, but there's value to helping somebody through that journey.
Yeah, and to an extent, the way it's going to go. So, I mean, I'm quite clear I wasn't, but one of the first things we did with Joe stuff is, and like you've done, like we've spoken before,
Mm,
is around value. So for me, it's really important to be courageous. It's really important to take a deep, be brave, because you've got to feel the fear and do it anyway, because it's going to happen. And I think the other thing is that, I need to sort of connection, I need to be, and a community. So I think for my patients, they need to have a dialogue with somebody who understands where they're going through, what they're going through. And I think a degree of curiosity as well. I think it's important to be curious about everything. Ask, because, you don't know what you don't know.
That's it. And a lot of us, especially, I'm going to say, speak for the medics, at least in the audience, a lot of us don't like this fluffy stuff about confidence and feeling assured and feeling good about the journey we're taking. If it's not evidence backed, if it's not solid, tangible, then we don't like it. We call it fluff. But I think I've had a personal change in the opinion around all of this, and realizing that it is people that make the world go around. Everything that we do is for people and from people, and there is a lot of fluff when it comes to people, and that fluff is actually where a huge amount of value lies, and a huge shortcoming that we often provide when we are conversing with other people, trying to help them, but missing out on all these things because we think it's fluff.
Yeah. I mean, never in a million years did I think I would be doing a vision board. Just even that phrase makes me feel nauseous. But you know what? Be curious, be courageous, connect with your community. It's not the end of the world. And just so turns out that when you do think, really allow yourself to be bold and brave and think, what would I really like? How do I want my day, week, month, year to look like? What do I want that to look like? And then I'm going to have to journal. That's a horrible phrase, but it's really, really effective. And there's masses of academic literature to say about getting clarity in your head. And then, we know the physiology of stress. So, I mean, I'm comfortable with an algorithm. I love an algorithm.
Algorithms are beautiful. And I think let's get a bit more granular, because some of our listeners might be saying, oh, just give me an algorithm. Like, what are the steps I take to actually make this happen?
Yeah.
So I want to hear, what were some of the first few steps that you took? So you had this fantastic idea of a post-op nurse. You knew the problem you were solving for people. You set it up, but then you said you left it for a while. What was that setting up process? What did that mean?
So the setting up process was, I did it all the wrong way around. So I went straight for a website, no idea about branding, no idea about marketing. I just thought marketing was my girlfriends who didn't go into medicine and just had nice lunches that were paid for. And but turns out it's a full career in itself. So I did it the wrong way, but there is a right way to doing it. I believe it starts with your values and your why. So why do you want to do something rather than your what? And then when the concept of the ikigai and working out what you can offer and what the world needs and what you can get paid for. And there's another section to it, I can't remember.
Your passion, your mission, your vocation, and your profession. I think, like the four domains. Yeah.
Trips off your tongue. So I went about it the wrong way. The wrong way, and that was because I didn't understand. And I didn't know who to ask. So now I learned a lot of practical things through Joe's course. I didn't know how to do a QR code. I've never used social media before. To this day, I've never looked on Instagram. So I needed practical skills, but in the right order. And the website and stuff was way down the end.
Yeah. And
yeah.
Did you have to sort of register your company, and what was sort of the technical sides of providing clinical care on a private basis?
Oh man, technical and me are not two words that are ever in the same sentence. I mean, that is, it's like, here you are, challenges, tech, it literally makes me feel dry mouthed. So technical challenges of running post-op nurse is marketing. That's the technical side. From a GDPR patient record stuff, that's all easy peasy because there's lots of nice software.
Right.
My biggest challenge is getting consultants to understand the value. And just to divert from your question slightly, but it's taken me a long time to be okay with people not wanting what I'm offering. So some surgeons, there's a chap called Samuel Rajaratnam, gorgeous surgeon. He loves what I do. Mr. Ghosh is another one. He loves what I do. And then there are other surgeons who say, no, thanks. My patients don't need you. And that's okay. That's okay because,
you're not for everybody.
I'm not for everyone. And I'm all right with that. It's taken a while, though. I don't think it's personal. And if it is, a while.
Yeah. I'm reading this book by Seth Godin nowadays. It's called This is Marketing.
Yes.
I'm a big fan of Seth Godin, and it's a beautiful way of looking at what marketing is. And we often think of marketing as being advertising, but advertising is what most marketing now looks like. But in essence, marketing is creating change. It's a way of communicating your idea and your value so that other people buy into that change and that idea. He also
Yeah.
talks about how if you're marketing to everybody, then you're actually not marketing to anybody, because you need to be specific. You need to talk about who it's for and what the benefits are for them.
Yeah.
And yeah, it just comes
Yeah.
full circle, the whole cycle of value in marketing and actually putting yourself out there.
Yeah, and there's a rub slightly there, and I agree because I've got stacks of cardiothoracic and colorectal experience as well, which I've loved doing. But who wants to be treated by a generalist?
Mm.
You want a specialist, don't you?
Mm.
And you can't help everybody.
So you started this journey, you realized you needed some more clarity and some more help, and marketing
Mm.
still the ongoing biggest challenge. And for somebody else out there who's thinking about, like, even if I think from a clinical perspective, any specialty, any sort of dietitian, physiotherapist, nurse, whoever it is, I think they can imagine doing the same job that they do in hospital on their own on the outside. And then they often feel like the regulatory hurdles are going to be the biggest challenge. But you're saying that it's actually convincing people of the value.
Yeah, I haven't found the regulator, I haven't found the NMC to be very helpful. I haven't found that to be an obstacle at all. Obviously, you have to be insured and all the rest of it. That isn't for me, hasn't been the obstacle at all. But the obstacle has been having the confidence to do it, to know why you're doing it. I mean, I cannot stress that enough, because if you think that entrepreneurship and setting up your own business is going to be easy, to replace your job, I can tell you it is not. And you have to work so hard just to get some money in. But, no one's paying your tax, no one's paying your national insurance, there's no annual leave, there's no sick pay. So it's not an easy alternative. And I think, but you were saying about marketing, it's about seeing it through the lens of the person who's using your service. So how many times have you been to a coffee shop and you think this is rubbish? Because the person who set up the coffee shop is seeing it from their perspective as the owner rather than the customer. And so for me, I need to pitch it and appeal to the patient, which is a different level and different lens to the surgeon. So I've got two different marketing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think I remember the moment I had the shift as well, because when I was doing my coaching and I started the coaching business, and it was just so hard to show, and it still is, to be honest, really hard to tell people what coaching really is and like what is it that I actually help
Yeah.
them with. And I realized that all of my life I've just shown up to work and somebody's told me what to do, or like, here's a problem, solve it. And then
Yeah.
everybody just kind of blindly trusts you to solve it. You don't have to show them why you're the right person or how you're going to solve it or why that's valuable for them to even solve. They come to the emergency department because they've got an emergency and I'm trained to solve that for them. And suddenly outside of it, it's so much harder. And this moment when I realized that communicating that needed me to look at it differently. And when I went back to shift the next day, I was looking at my clinical work in a completely different lens as well. And that transformed everything for me. And I don't know if you've gone back to clinical work in A&E as well. How's that changed for you?
Yeah, absolutely. It's really important to me that I'm up to date clinically and not just supporting patients based on a memory of how healthcare was, back in the day kind of thing. Each time I go back and do a shift, I was on duty last Friday. Each time I'm in resus, I'm thinking, I'm just noticing and I'm absorbing. And the beauty of being on the bank or being a locum is that I'm kind of not part of the whole chaos, the managerial chaos. So I can just come in and have that beautiful time with the patients and suck out all the goodness. And you go home and process all of it. But I think it's, easy to get derailed and it's easy to come out of your lane. And I try and
Hmm.
sort of think as if I'm in my lane and I know what I want. And, you've got these kind of cars coming at the side, T-boning you. It's like, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm driving down, I know my destination. And I think it's a bumpy road. It's a really, really bumpy road. And when you just pitch up and go to work, it's hard work for sure.
Hmm.
But this is a different level of uncertainty.
Yeah,
And it's a gamble, right? Because there's no money coming in, ostensibly.
absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that is a bit that puts a lot of people off. They need the money, simple as that. And I think we all do, and we want a level of surety to say what we're doing on the other side will work. And I mean, we often want to rely on our clinical skills and everything that we've learned so far to deliver that. But as you've alluded to, there's more pieces to the puzzle that we don't actually even think about. So I guess if somebody's listening to this and they're saying, I really want to take what I do clinically outside, and I want to do it on my own and outside of all of the bureaucracy and paperwork. And I want to deliver a fantastic service for a specific person. How do they even start?
Well, they find an amazing coach. I mean, I don't know where you'd find one, but you find it. But you find. I think you find out. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend to anyone find a coach and find a coach who matches your world. So you know, I'm a wife. I'm a mother. So I need someone who knows my world. That for me is really important. So Jo for me was absolutely perfect because she's a mother of four.
Mm,
I'm a mother of two, so she can see my world, and that so I would crack on and get some free coaching because it's out there. And the hour that we had together was speaking. Do you remember we had our Zoom call? I had some free
we
coaching
did.
with you. It was just incredible, such game-changing, thought-provoking questions. So I would say to anyone, don't hesitate. You don't have to know the answer. You don't have to be clear. That's what these guys are trained in, sucking out these bits of these little gems from you and then reflecting them back to you and make you really do some deep thinking, which is horribly uncomfortable, but really, really important. So that's what I would suggest. And think about why. I cannot
Mm,
stress that enough. What do you want your day, week, month, year to look like? And I think when you've got some clarity on that, you can start to think about how you can make your whatever your speciality is into a side hustle.
yeah. Beautiful. I think on that note, I'm going to do a
Yeah.
quick pause and say that if anyone's been thinking about making medicine their side hustle, then listen up because my Clinician Impact Actionship is now open for applications. This 6-week program is designed for clinicians who want to take back control of their careers, build credibility beyond the clinical work, and establish themselves as leaders, innovators, or entrepreneurs. If you're ready to break out of the clinical career box and create new opportunities without walking away from medicine entirely, then head to my website or drop me a DM on LinkedIn. And I think I'm going to make a new webpage called coachwithshub.com/action. So if you want to check that out, go ahead and you'll find more information about this program. Right. So back to what we were talking about and really finding a coach and going ahead. So I'm curious, what does your week look like at the moment?
Oh my God, my week is gold. I mean, I start my day. I do realize I'm very lucky, but I'm 30 years into my career, so I'm not 20. So I feel like I've earned it. I start my day with riding.
Wow.
So I've already been galloping across the countryside this
Oh,
morning,
that's so beautiful.
and that is just it's an absolute luxury. And I know I'm very, very fortunate for it, but that's what that looks like. And then there's some admin work, and then there's preparation. So later on in the week, I've started up some in-person patient education talks, which I'm really excited about because I love a captive audience.
Wow.
So I can bore them to tears about how to get prepared mentally and physically for their surgery. And then I get to follow them up post-op because I'm working with a consultant who feels that he wants all of his patients to have my input. So I'm so excited for that. So my week is balance between mental well-being, which is being outside,
Hmm.
and this, and then I'll pop into A&E for a shift. So it's gold. And obviously see my family. Sorry, I forgot that.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I don't know why I keep getting this image of you on a rainy day in wearing like a green hat and a raincoat
yeah,
in a puddle. I don't know if that picture exists, but for some
yeah.
reason,
That's right. But I'll always have lipstick on because that's just what I do. I always, all through the pandemic, under my mask,
yeah,
comedy
I
lipstick.
love it.
Yeah, and so when I get that balance, because one of the other things I found about, working on your own is just that opportunities are massive. And when you ask other people about it, everyone's got an opinion. It's like naming a baby. Everyone knows John. Oh no, don't call it that. Oh, Martha. Oh no, she was a girl in my class. And so if you ask everybody, the
Hmm.
options are endless. People say, oh, you could be international. And it's like, I'm a one-woman band in West Sussex. I think it's unlikely. And that's not what I want. That's not what I want. In my lane, in my vision,
I
that's
think,
not what I want. And I
yeah,
think
that's the other version of it. I think a lot of people are really put off by the idea of entrepreneurship or business because they've always seen it as, running a million or billion-dollar business and being super
yeah,
busy, not having time for anything. But the reality is you get to choose. You get to choose how you want it to be and what you want to achieve through it, the difference you want to make in the world.
yeah. And you don't have to be doing the diary of a CEO to be running. And I think entrepreneur, I mean, I was thinking about how would you define the word entrepreneur? What does it mean to you?
Well, that's an interesting one. I think for me, it really is a change maker in a wholly responsible sense. I think in the way that you've done it as well. If you see that there's a change that you can make in the world that makes a difference, and you're willing to take the responsibility to actually bring that to reality, I think to me that's an entrepreneur, because that means the marketing, the sharing the vision, the actual understanding the problem, creating a solution for it, and then being able to do it in a way that's sustainable and builds on itself and creates value as it goes along. That's my
Yeah,
interpretation of entrepreneurship.
yeah, yeah. I would echo that, but there's quite a lot of words in that. That's quite, it's quite weighty, isn't it?
It is.
So it'd be interesting to see if people have any thoughts about how they imagine entrepreneurship to be.
Yeah. So I guess anyone listening live, drop in like a 1 or 2 word version of that you resonate with. What does entrepreneurship mean to you? Put that in the comments. And I guess even if you're
Mm.
listening a podcast later, as long as you're not driving, put that into the comments in the podcast there. But how do you look at that word, Portia?
Well, I mean, I've written some things down, but I think you're more eloquent than I am. But I've just for me, it's about moving away from those prescribed practices
Mm,
to being models, to being just more flexible and adaptive, and just to be able to turn more quickly. And if someone say this is flagging up, for me to go, okay, I can do this. And because I work with a small number of people, which I choose to, then I can be really responsive to their needs, and that's really important to me. I don't want to be so busy that I'm saying that I'm hurrying people or that I can't fit them in when they need me. So that's part of my values, is
mm,
about offering that really high quality responsive service to them, and that feels entrepreneurial rather
yeah.
than how it has done for the last 30 years in the
Yeah.
NHS, which
So
has changed exponentially,
and I
obviously.
can just see how doing that inner work of realizing what your purpose is and what your values are has helped you do that, because it's so easy to then start a service that's driven by market demand and what your customers and your clients want, that you're just constantly basically working for them instead of working for your previous employer. And you don't want
Yeah.
that. You want to do it your way, and that means understanding what your way is. So that's really beautiful. And
Yeah.
I guess
No, I was just thinking, but at the same time, you have to be acutely aware to get the feedback. So I get a lot of feedback from
mm,
my patients, but perhaps I was listening to Dr. Stewart's podcast before, and
mm-hmm,
about how biased our questionnaires can be to give you the feedback that reflects your service well. But I'm constantly interested, perpetually interested in what's it like to be a user of my service, and what can I do better and differently. I've got
yeah.
reasonably broad shoulders. I can,
I think a book that you might like if you're on this journey is called Brain Audit
yeah,
by Sean D'Souza.
okay,
He goes through the entire journey talking about sales, but also particularly about marketing. So how do you understand what your potential clients need? How do you speak in their language? But then also how do you get the feedback to improve your services? It's a really eye-opening book. So really useful, valuable information in there.
yeah. And I think I'd made a lot of assumptions about who would use my service, and a lot of assumptions about whether people would or wouldn't pay for it. But it never ceases to amaze me what people will pay for. People pay for
Mm.
nails and lashes, and I pay for horse fizz. So it's wrong to assume that somebody might or might not pay. And surgeons have had that. Oh well, they're NHS, they won't pay. But that's just, the evidence is not there at all. So I support NHS patients and self-funding patients. The patients with private medical insurance are less keen because I'm not covered under their insurance. And then
Mm.
they're like, well, why isn't this covered? I was like, because no one's caught on to it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess that speaks volumes to the value that you provide, isn't it? And value is very different for everybody. How would you sort of summarize the value that your best clients get from you?
I think they go away feeling, so for me, the most important thing is that they're informed, that they're safe, and that they're confident. And I
Mm,
believe that that holy trinity will take them to the place of being empowered, because I don't want them to be dependent on healthcare services to live their life. I want them to be independent with their ADLs and
mm,
have their plans and dreams. So I want them to feel empowered to be able to carry on their recovery. So that's where I think I give the value, that I give them the confidence through knowledge and through being sort of safe, sort of clinically safe, being monitored, 20% of my patients are readmitted. So it's not like no one ever
Wow.
goes back in to
Mm,
hospital. So, 1 in 5 patients go back into A&E. And you wouldn't wish A&E on your worst nightmare, worst enemy, would you? Because it's
no.
not a nice experience, particularly when you've just had surgery. So it's really important to me that patients feel safe and that they've got the information to recognize complications. And they feel empowered to, if they need to pick up the phone and escalate their own
Mm,
care, then that they got the right language and the confidence to do it. So it's really important. Confidence is really important to me.
yeah. It's better for patients, better for doctors, better for the system, and better for me and A&E to not have
Yeah,
to see these patients in the middle of the night. That's not what's best for them either. So
yeah,
that's really, really
absolutely.
beautiful. And actually recognizing this, converting it into an idea, taking action, and making that a reality for people in a way that you're giving value to them is beautiful. So
Mm.
thank you for sharing your journey with us, Portia. And we're going to kind of move into the second phase of this podcast where I'll let Portia ask me whatever you'd like, Portia. So whatever's on your mind.
So much to ask. First of all, thank you. Thank you really so much for asking me to do this, because apart from anything, it's a huge compliment, and it's and a great opportunity. So thank you. But I think what I would like to know, what qualities do you think a coach has, an effective coach, and what is an effective coach? That
Yeah.
would be,
So thank you. I think that's a really nice question. It's been an honor to have you. And by the way, Joe's been in the audience as well, and I can just see her comments saying
oh,
she's
hi
happy to see
Joe.
us live. And and someone's put the name of the whole book in there as well. So thank you very much, Anas. Yeah, I guess so. I think the word coach is quite ambiguous, and in today's time,
Mm.
everybody wants to call themselves a coach, whether that's a mentor or a guide or a teacher. If you're kind of helping somebody achieve something, you call yourself a coach. I guess where I come from is my first exposure to coaching was QI coaching. So we were bringing a methodology to a problem and helping people apply the methodology to solve a problem. So that was the first iteration of coaching that I saw. And then when I did my coach training, we were very much ICF. So that's the International Coaching Federation oriented. And what they say and the way they look at coaching is a thought partnership. So a thought partnership in which the coach uncovers the coachee's potential. So I guess going back to like actually answering your question finally is that a good coach is someone who has the ability to listen in a way that they can reflect back both what you're saying but also what you're not saying, so that you can look at what's going on in your mind and actually question it and move forward. And I think that is the essence of what a good coach is, the ability to listen and reflect back. And I'm just going to quickly mention that there's a couple of different forms of listening as well, and this is something I didn't know about before I became a coach. And so there's listening to respond, which is saying, I'm going to listen to the bits that you're saying so I can tell you what my answer is. There's listening to diagnose, which I think as clinicians, many of us do. There's listening to argue, which is saying, like, I'm going to pick out exactly the points that I have something against. And I'm going to say, because you said this, I'm going to say this. And then there's truly listening to understand and listening to get an idea of what's going on the other side. As a coach, I don't give advice. A good coach wouldn't give advice because I will never understand what's really happening on your side and in your world. You're the best person to understand that. So all I can do is help you look at every element in a comprehensive manner and in a unique manner, and perhaps bring some methodology to it, just the way I used to in my quality improvement world, to say, hey, this is when something is comprehensive, and this is when something is MECE. MECE is a concept from McKinsey which says mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So you've looked at everything in a different in silos. So yeah, that's kind of what that means. Sorry, long-winded answer, but that was a tough question.
no, that's interesting that you ended that answer with that, because that makes one of the things I find most difficult is to have a strategic approach to this, because it's just so enormous. How would you encourage people to, I mean, I think medics, I don't know whether nurses are different, but I haven't been studying, or have been studying, but not in the same way that medics do from when they were 14, when they were doing I've done my degrees, I've done my teacher training, I've lectured at university, yada yada. But how do you help how can you help people with that strategy, with that staying in their lane, so with overwhelm, because there are so many different things you can do with your time.
Absolutely. I
But
think
but without blurring the boundaries. So my question was, about strategy, about how you, any thoughts on that? Any books? Any?
Yeah, so I think the journey is, especially if you're moving from being an employee to, I guess, when you're looking at making medicine your side hustle, you're becoming a bit of an expert on a specific topic, whether that's being a leader, an innovator, quality improver, or entrepreneurship. And I think there's various phases to that journey. And I think every phase of that journey has various tools that you can use along the way. One of the things that I really like to talk about when it comes to making this career shift and this, how you actually can create a strategy and use a framework, is to talk about what I call the impactful clinician framework. And
Yes.
the impactful clinician framework, I think, to me, is a way in which, when you're considering career change, when you're looking to move beyond just clinical practice, the three things that you should aim to have in that other side so that you're successful in actually getting what you want. So in that, the first bit which we've talked about is purpose. And this is the biggest bit that we tend to oversee. You want to have a purpose-driven approach to your career shift and your career strategy. The second thing is having equity. So you want a piece of the value that you're creating. So I guess for yourself, the value that you create for each patient doesn't just end there. They perhaps go on and tell other people they have that value for the rest of their life. That value that you've created is with you for forever, I guess, in a way. And you want that when you're considering a career shift. And the last bit is influence. So if there's something that you're really passionate about, if there's a problem that you want to solve and fix in the world for the people that matter to you, then you want to be able to influence both the decision making, but how they make that happen. And I think marketing is a huge piece of that, and marketing in the sense of actually making change happen. So in my experience, speaking to a lot of people, when you're looking at changing careers or going beyond medicine, we often chase equity and we often chase influence by position of status or power. And there's an element of purpose which is most often missing, and that leads to being quite unfulfilled. But when you align all three of them, that's like the magic formula for creating a high impact career outside of clinical practice. I don't know if that resonates with your own journey, Portia. I think it might.
Completely. I've just thought of something else again. I can really recommend doing this when you're perimenopausal. It's really good for focus. It's gone. Sorry, that's
That's
the
okay.
reality. I could come back to me. I've got post-it notes. I can really recommend investing in post-it notes. I beg your pardon.
Absolutely. I've got loads of them. They're all around my screen as well.
Yeah. Tell me, when you're at work working clinically and your colleagues say to you, "What's this thing you're doing, Shub? What's this in clinician thing I see? I see your post." How do they respond to this notion that actually one can work differently? Because you hear people say dreadful things like, "Oh, it's such a shame. It's such a shame. It's such a waste that you've left the NHS," or or that you're not practicing in the same capacity that you were before. How do you respond to those kind of, what are your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
So I think mixed responses. So I think it's unfortunate, but the truth is that almost everybody I work with at some point has thought about leaving clinical practice
I know.
because of how hard it is. So everyone's kind of been contemplating and thinking about how to do it. The other response I get is that, oh, medicine can't be a side hustle. I wouldn't come to you. I wouldn't want my doctor to be not so serious about their clinical practice. And I say to them, or sometimes I don't say to them, and just think in my mind that, having it as a side hustle doesn't mean that it's not serious. It means that you do take it seriously, but it doesn't consume your life.
Yeah, and that you're not burnt out by it.
Absolutely. And that you go beyond just what your role is. You make a difference beyond just those limited roles in which the system puts you into, and you can actually make a bigger change in the world. And if you can do that, why wouldn't you do that? And I guess the truth is that, like you, I've also realized that I'm not for everybody. Not everybody resonates with what I say. So most people at work probably don't even know I do this, and they don't ask, and
Okay.
I don't tell them about it. But if they share with me that they're thinking about something else, they're thinking about a career beyond, then I say, hey, if you'd like to talk about this, we can do that outside of the work setting. But I realize it's not for most people, and I think we're very much set in our ways and very happy with having the security. No matter how unhappy we are with the working environment, we're happy with the security it gives us.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about over the 30 years that I've been practicing, healthcare is unrecognizable now to how it used to be. And one of the things I was thinking about, as post-op nurse being something that would go into the into the private domain. And I was thinking about expectations. I know to an extent in the NHS, I think patients are okay, or they expect a degree of it not necessarily always meeting their expectations, because we know that staff are frazzled and that
Mm,
resources are limited and fundings and so on and so forth. But I'm wondering, in the private sector, people don't expect that. You don't expect to pay for a 3-course meal and get 2 meals and say, well, sorry about that. And I
yeah.
wonder, as you know, as the landscape changes, how much this kind of I'm just wondering how it can move from NHS into private. You want both, don't you? I mean, I feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable saying I'm all right with private healthcare. It doesn't sit very comfortably with me, but I also feel like I've done my dues. So
Yeah, and the truth is that is the reality of the way things are heading. And I mean, we're right now in the middle of some
hmm.
massive restructuring within the NHS. And what that means in the
Yeah,
next 5 to 10 years, who knows? But the bottom line is that we need to be able to provide care to people in a way that meets their standards and their expectations. And whether that's
yeah,
through the NHS or privately, I think some people would prefer private care. And if that's what they need and that's what they want, then they should be able to access it. Coming from growing up in India and sort of doing medicine in India, there is huge private healthcare, which I think has equal failings. And I think the biggest failings on the whole, on a large picture, that mattered the most to me was the disruption it caused to the doctor patient relationship. Because you aren't going in saying, I trust you to solve my problem. You go in sort of buying a service and then reviewing it to see how well it met your demands and your needs, which is a very different
fascinating.
picture. So
Yeah,
I'd hate for that to happen in the UK. I think the way the NHS is structured, where we don't have to think about money, is beautiful in terms of both what the patients get, but also in terms of how a clinician practices and what that means for their world. So I'm hoping someone listening to this might be able to have a say in what this translates to for the NHS and going private. So that's
yeah.
tough times, but yeah, we'll keep moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's your experience been though with the private patients? How how is the interaction different?
The interaction is different because I'm not in a rush. And
Okay.
so I do remote work and I do in-person work. So I go to people's houses and I sit down and I talk them through their surgery. We talk about why they feel dizzy when they stand up and
Hmm.
how to manage their pain and so on and so forth. But when you're not in a hurry and you just see people in their own setting, everyone just sort of they just settle. You know, they feel heard. They are being heard.
Hmm.
Their trauma of being a patient is being valued. And that in itself, just somebody acknowledging that what they've been through is really traumatic, um, is unbelievably important to people to be valued. And so in terms of sort of satisfaction, the satisfaction is I mean, literally, I have 100% patient satisfaction from saying
Wow.
thank you for valuing what I've been through as a traumatic thing. Because elective hip and knee surgery, you're booked in, you're out the door, fine, but it is major surgery. And whilst technology is so brilliant that you can have a robotic work and you can have day case surgery, this is fantastic. But as humans, I don't feel that we've moved at the pace that technology has. And as humans, we still want to talk to people and still want to, yes, everything is Googleable. Everything you can put through ChatGPT. It's not like the information isn't out there, but I still think as humans, people want that dialogue. They don't just want to go home with a PDF. And
Yeah.
I feel like I'm
Arguably
well
more than ever
placed with
before.
my experience. Yeah, I think so. I think so. I really, really do. And so it's sort of, I feel like I'm setting up an analog service in a digital era. But I think that
Wow.
that's what humans, and I'm great with that because
Absolutely.
digital is so not my bag, but I'm trying. But I really do feel that that's what humans think. Now, if we go forward 20 years, maybe that would be a different world, because everybody in
Hmm.
that age group will have always grown up with digital, uh, grown up in digital landscape. Their expectations might be that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
That's amazing.
interestingly, people say to me, "Oh, you just see little old ladies," and they're not the people I see. And it's often people from my age, so in their early 50s and upwards. And because the it's like marriage guidance counselling. I mean, you've got somebody going through surgery. They're focusing on the wedding day, and they haven't thought about the marriage. And then suddenly they're
Wow.
home, and that's that's the actual marriage, and that's the recovery. And they're thinking about is the surgery, and that's the wedding day. And then they're in this honeymoon phase when they're post-op recovering in the hospital for 2 days. They go, "Oh, I've got a room to myself," and it's like, great, but that is not recovery, I can
That is
tell you.
such a beautiful analogy that makes so much sense. And I'm sure that everyone who's been through marriage understands what that means.
Or had a baby or a death or
Yeah,
anything life-changing,
absolutely.
you become laser focused on the event and to self-protect. And I
Mm,
get that. So we don't think about what's coming. And we don't know what to ask because we don't know what we don't know.
beautiful. I think on
Yeah.
that note, I'm just going to quickly turn to our comments to see if there's any questions for us. I don't see any just yet, but I just want to take a quick second to say thank you so much for sharing this journey with us, Portia. Hopefully, it's inspired some of our listeners to actually take on this big hurdle and realize that what they think are hurdles may not be the biggest challenges, but there's more on the journey, something more hidden, and yet it's all worth it. I mean, you could be waking up and going for a horse ride on the countryside and having a day a week in the
Yeah,
A&E instead. So it's all possible, really, isn't
100%.
it? So thank you very much for tuning in to the Medic Side Hustles podcast. Our next live episode will be on the 2nd of April with Wesley Fogel, which is going to be a special episode because he is not a medic, he is not a clinician, but he works in the world of fundraising in the healthcare sector. So if anyone's interested in that, do drop in on the 2nd of April. It'll be live on LinkedIn and then later on the Medic Side Hustle podcast. So if you're wondering if you're ready to make medicine your side hustle, try my quiz, which should be down in the comments. If you have any questions for us, Portia, do let us know. If there's any questions or any takeaway points that you want our listeners to take, or action points for our listeners.
I think if there was any bit of advice I would give is don't overthink it. Keep it simple, paralysis, analysis, paralysis, whichever way you look at it. You won't know whether it's effective without trying it. And no one judges you. No one's interested in you that much, to be honest. People are only interested in themselves. So,
Mm,
you put yourself out on social media, you feel like a right wally, but it's okay. It's okay. And if they don't resonate with you, then that's also okay. And be persistent, show up, be persistent. Joe says this thing about being a mosquito. It's like be annoying. Be annoying until somebody gets you and you're like, right, good, I've got your attention. Because it's a busy landscape out there. It's a busy, busy world out there. As you say, lots of people being coaches, lots of people doing this, that, and the other. So, be brave, show up and be really kind of pat yourself on the back for trying something different because it's dead easy to go into work, follow the algorithm,
that's it. That's it. Don't be an NPC anymore for my younger listeners, I guess. Just do something that you've been imagining, that you've been holding on to. Just make it a reality.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope the conversation sparked
Yeah.
some ideas and inspired you to think bigger about your career and your impact. Until next time, stay curious, keep solving big problems, and remember, you have the power to create something extraordinary. See you soon.